Hello there, Voltage Modular people. PoohBear here, and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the poly reorder, the preset chord stepper poly, and the big poly meter. I'm going to do a technical dive, but I'm also going to do a lot more practical things and give a lot more hints and tips on how to use my modules and hopefully give you more food for thought of how you can use them in your projects. The chord stepper is obviously part of the stepper family. The purpose I actually wrote these steppers for is because I like to modulate from one sound to another sound over time. And that's the whole purpose of these. It does everything over time. So even though these could be, I call them presets because each step could be a totally different preset. So you can actually take a sound and really morph it to a totally different sound. But as I said, we can do that morphing over time. So it gives a nice sort of glidey sort of sound as it goes through it. There's all kinds of practical uses you can also use these steppers for. And one of the things I started to use them for, which I really like the results of, I'd actually say put this way onto a note, and I come down here and I'd set up a chord. I don't know what chord I'm going to set up, but you come along and you start setting up a chord. But as you can see, it's not the easiest thing to sort of scroll around and set loads of chords up and getting all the notes right and so on and so forth. And then you do a save and then you move on to your next step and then you do it, repeat the process and so on and so forth. And hence I came up with the chord stepper. So it's a quick, easy way that I can actually record my chords, and then I'm going to literally glide between one chord and another. And it doesn't matter how big the intervals are between the chords, it will actually work it out. So it's a bit like saying every single note will actually have its own personal bend. So we're going to bend from one note to another. It doesn't matter, as I say, how many steps are between the notes. They can all be disjointed, and we can actually bend them all at the same time and then arrive from one chord to another at exactly the same time. So you get a really nice result. And obviously we'll go into that in a second. Now, I call them preset steppers because we have 127 steps. That happens to coincide, obviously, with the MIDI world. That's why I decided to do 127 steps, and we can actually have a little look at that a bit closer. Here, I've actually wired them all up in a cascade fashion. So it means if I'm changing this step here, everything else gets changed as you expect. But it doesn't mean I can come down here and I can change this step, which will obviously affect this, and then I can then change that step. So you can obviously have this kind of cascading effect. And obviously, if I come back to the top, it'll affect everything. Just a little bit of food for thought. That's one way you can actually do things. I will admit, I find sort of stepping this back and forth a little bit of a pain. So what we can actually do, we can use this particular module here, which is called the control pad, put it into a 1 volt. And by the way, these are a 1 volt divided by 127. That's the actual value it needs to go from each step. So I've got a number of modules which will actually help you do that. So you don't have to do that conversion yourself. So now I can quickly come down and get to my steps. But as I say, the whole point is we can actually jump between steps. You don't actually have to do it sequentially like a normal, sequencer or stepper. We can obviously jump all over the place and actually choose different steps if we wish to do so. But what I'm going to quickly look at now is how I'd actually do it if I wanted these to step up, say, sequentially. So over here, I think I've got enough room on the screen. Let's have a quick look. Let's put that over there. I'm going to add a flip-flop counter. There we go. We'll fit that in there. And down here, I'm going to add in, I'm going to need a trigger gate to actually trigger that. And I'm also going to, no, that'll do for the moment. This will actually work absolutely fine. So I'm just going to take the gate out and put it into the trigger in for the flip-flop counter. And I'm just going to take out the actual current step it's on, which happens to be in a 1 volt range already, and plug it in over here. Now, at the moment, this is plugged in and this is plugged in. So obviously, as I go up the steps, this number is actually going to be adding these two numbers together, which is not exactly the most practical thing. Let me just grab this and give myself a little bit of space. So in here, I'm going to add another one of my modules to get around this sort of issue called AutoSense. So AutoSense will actually work out the last value that change that come in, and it would use that. So if I was to come in here now and change this, say to 10, that's brilliant. Let me just push the threshold up. So now when I start clicking on this, you can see this going up 4, 5, here we go, up to 6, 7. It's now not adding these two numbers together. And obviously here I can come here and then suddenly change that, and I can overwrite it. I use this a lot. I actually use it a lot for input stuff as well, which so I can bring my keyboard in. So I might be doing something with the keyboard, and then I might have a sequencer that I want to kick off to actually then go through and say, I might be building the sound up, but I don't want that sequence to go all the time. It's sometimes easier to play a keyboard. So that's where AutoSense comes in handy. But here's a different way. As I said, we're now stepping up, and we can obviously change the steps, or we can use this particular method to quickly jump around. And obviously you can use LFOs and all sorts of other things. One of the reasons, as I said, I sort of went into the MIDI world, or 0 to 127, is I'm actually going to use my simple little converter. So this is a simple little converter. I'm going to actually wire this up to the pitch coming in, and then I'm going to put this into my AutoSense. So now what I'm actually going to do, and I'm going to put this onto what's called a 1 volt range. So this is something which you can use to convert your box standard plus to minus 5 volts, say an LFO. So you can actually have a ramp LFO, which would then obviously step through everything nicely. But I've got an external keyboard, and I'm actually going to start playing the keyboard, and I'm playing my different notes on my keyboard. And as you can see, we can choose the different steps. Now, the keyboard I've got is a very tiny keyboard. It's a little 25 note keyboard. And so obviously its lowest note happens to be step 48. So we're starting from 48 and not 0. Well, again, that's not really a problem because I've got something called Transer. So let's see. I don't think I've got that there. So let's go into utilities. There we go. I can grab my Transer out. I can put the pitch into that. I can take the pitch out here. And the whole purpose of Transer is the note what's coming in, it puts it to like a 0 volt. So it is transposing it. I built it because then I had like sequencers. I can make a copy of the sequencer, slow that second sequencer right down, put it through Transer, and then I can use that sequencer to transpose the first sequencer. So it was quite a nifty way of doing it. So now I've got this set up. When I now hit that same C, he says, oh, I'm looking over here, it's looking at the wrong thing there. You can see my C's now down 1 to 0s. So now I'm playing the notes on the keyboard, and we can switch between them. So this is actually quite a nice way that we can obviously control the steppers via a keyboard. I think what we really need to do now is just jump straight in. Let's get rid of that and actually build ourselves a sound so you can actually really hear what this is really about. What I'm going to quickly do is go into my library. I'm going to go into cabinets, and we need a sound. Oh, I've got some string sounds here. That would do. So I'm going to quickly click on add. So I've added now that particular cabinet. It's probably right down at the bottom. So we're going to grab this up so we can have a play with it. Bosh. Cool. As this has Cabby's Mate already attached to it, instantly you get to hear it. It's automatically wires everything up, so you don't actually have to go around pre-wiring stuff. Might just make that slightly higher octave. Okay. So that's really cool. So now we've got ourselves some sound sources that we can actually start hearing things going on. So for the first bit of wiring, I'm going to take the poly pitch in. I'm going to go via my ReOrder because, as I say, Voltage Modular has its own particular order. It brings stuff in. And because we're wanting to go from one particular pitch to another, we've got to have it in a particular order. And that's what that's going to do it for. Now, usually I'm a stickler to say, hey, I would take this pitch and put it into this CV. Today, I'm actually going to leave it. The reason I do that, I always believe in trying to do the shortest route. But this way I can actually turn this off when I'm playing around with this. So now what I'm going to do is click on this live button. I'm actually just going to play a chord. And the first chord I'm going to play, because this is already set to C1, it's going to actually bend from C1 up into the chord I'm going to be playing. I happen to have this module set so it actually hold all the notes. What I've actually got as well, which I'm going to bring onto the screen over here, hey, here we go, is my little keyboard checker. So you can actually see what I'm actually playing on my keyboard. You can actually see what I'm playing, so you can see it actually coming through. So as you can see, we can actually use this live, which is really nice and simple. I say the main thing I wanted to do is to be able to get my chords in and to be able to record them. Because you're in live mode, this is obviously the chord I was playing, and I'm actually going to put on this what's called hold to a last release. So when I let go of the keyboard, it keeps the notes in the right order. If you don't have this option on, it will do a little bit of reordering, and I'll talk about that in detail a little bit later. At the moment, if I saved this, click on save, it would save this into this particular step, but there's no gate information on. You've got to make sure that the gate information is turned on. You can't turn gate information on now because we're in live mode and it's trying to read the gate information from the external keyboard. As soon as I take it out of live mode, you can see we've actually lost everything because there's nothing coming in. So if I was to put it on to learn and autosave, this is where the beautiful thing comes into practice. So now it's saved it. You may notice there's this meter coming up. So while that meter's going up, I could actually be changing my mind of what chord I wish to save. And when I decide, I just hold the chord, it saves it and moves it on to the next step. So whereas before I was using all them scrolls to try and build up a chord, you can see I've got the ability now, I can very, very, very quickly save these. So now obviously I can take the learn off. So the learn's off. I'm just going to quickly wire this back up into my auto sense, and I've got my keyboard coming in here, haven't I? So I'm just going to disconnect that. Oh, I've already disconnected it. So now from here, when we actually select a note, it should start playing. Obviously, we've got this little off button so we can turn everything off, which comes in handy when we're just sort of experimenting and getting things set up as well. If you just decide to use the learn function, so let's go to a patch I haven't used and click on learn, I can play the chord. Oh, I've got auto save on, sorry. Let me turn it off. Let's play another chord. And it's come into the system, but you've got to click the save button now. If I let go of the keyboard, again, it's turned these off because of, it's trying to learn from the keyboard, so it's trying to get this gate information. Even though I clicked on save and I take learn off, it's remembered them, so obviously I can turn the gates on now. You may have a situation where you may say, actually, I actually want the gates off. And why would you want the gates off? Well, if I now go from this particular step down a step, where there happens to be a chord, so let me try that again. So I'm going to go from this step to this step. It's glided from this step to the correct notes. On this step here, you can see we've all got C1. So now if I go from that step to this step, it's going to go from C1 upwards. So there's a difference. So here on step 7, I might come along and say, actually, I'm going to push these all the way up to the top. I was going to save that. So now when I go from this step down, it's actually going to do a nice big swoop down. And that's the sweep up. So I'm just sort of playing around here. So this is also a way, if you've got 4 notes and you're going into, say, a 3-note chord or a 3-note chord into a 4-note chord, you might want to preset one of the settings so you're not coming from that deep note coming up. you're coming to something more practical. If I was going from, say, a 3 into a 4-note chord, what I'd probably do, say in this case, I'd probably set this one here to G3. Where are we? There we go, G3, and save that. So what it means is when I go into my 4-note chord, wherever it happens to be, that G3, you're going to hear G3, and it could easily split 2 different ways, because on the next chord, I might be playing like an F3 down there. So that's going to go down to an F3, but this note here could be a C4 or something. So it's going to actually then glide up. So one's gliding down, one's gliding up. At the moment, we have it what's called in time mode. And in time is you actually set the exact time you want to glide from one step to the other. And this happens to be 1.5 seconds at the moment. It goes down to as low as half a second, and you go all the way up to 60 seconds. So it's quite a long sort of time. And as I said, it doesn't matter how far the intervals are between each other, it's always going to be in that time. Intervals, on the other hand, is slightly different. So intervals will actually move each note, in this particular case, depending on your output, towards its new step at this particular interval, 100 milliseconds. So it's going to, every 100 milliseconds, it's going to recalculate where it needs to be. Now, that would mean if I've got different interval size, it's going to arrive at different times. So if I was to set this, say, quite high for this, and then, actually, I'm going to set it low to start with. And I think if we go to step, here we go, this is really, really low. What you're going to see, if we wire this up, we can see our notes are coming out. We can see our gates coming out. But you're going to see these are going to stop at different times. So let's see if we can get this working. If I turn it on. So that one will stop first. So you can obviously have fun with that. We also have the output. So if we put it on like full steps, it's literally going to go one semitone at a time. Half, it's literally half a semitone. It's going to go up, and quarter and smooth. Quarter is something I sort of set it to quite a bit. You get quite a nice bit. Smooth, it really is trying to recalculate between, even in the time interval as well, smoothest possible transition going from whatever value you've got set to the new value it's actually going to. But we can obviously put it into, I won't put it quite as high. And again, the reason I put it down while I'm actually changing it, because if I don't put it down, it's actually going to take internally, even though there's no gates on, it's actually working this itself out to get down to this particular value. Obviously, if I turn this off, you're not going to see anything coming out, because it's not actually sending the calculations out at all. So it's all internally. So internally now, it should also be sitting at C-1. So let's repeat the test where we're now going to, we've got it off, and let's actually go and put it onto step. And you can hear it going up. He says. You get slightly different results from that. We've got an offset in, so we can actually, you can put obviously an LFO or something else on it, so you can actually play with the time live as you're going through things. You could get some, I should really put the word experimental, so you can get some interesting sort of funnies going on as it recalculates the time. You can be scrolling from one step to another step and you can then change the step. So if I was to put this, say, onto a higher interval, there we go, that would do. And let's make sure we got into off mode. In the process, I'm going to change the step. It's now going to go and move towards this value. Now it's going to this value. So halfway through, as I say, whatever you currently happen to be on, it's going to take that as the starting point, and then it's going to say, right, this is where I need to get to. It recalculates and it starts moving. So even though you're changing the step, if you've got it, say, set to, well, obviously I only got it set to 3 seconds, but if I'm quick enough, let's try and set it, say, to 1 second. That 1 second will never complete if I'm forever changing the steps, because obviously it's restarting again. I have a re-trigger out as well. So obviously when we're going from one step to another step, because the voltage is high, the voltage will always stay high. So by having the trigger, so in fact we should be able to see this over here. If I was to put this onto channel, we can actually have a look at the time. So if I was to turn this on, we've got a high voltage. It's not changing. If I put re-trigger on and change it, it's dropped it. It's dropped it. So re-trigger will literally just drop that voltage for one sample. That's what you're looking at here. This is the number of samples it was actually holding that voltage for. And that's usually enough to re-trigger envelopes, or you may have some other goodness down the road which you need to re-trigger, which we'll actually have a little look at later as well, what you can use that for. Down the bottom, we do have a copy and paste. So you can copy one step and you can paste it into another step. And obviously anything you do here, you've got to remember to save it. So it's not like I've changed it and it saved it. If I go off my step and come back again, it's going to remember what it was before. So if you were changing something, you've gone, oh God, what was I on? I've forgotten. Well, you just need to switch away and then come back again. And it'll obviously recall what that previous step was. So you have to save everything. So I'm going to go off on a little tangent now, as one does. And what I'm actually going to do is going to reset this. So this is now blank. I'm going to populate this up with loads of MIDI chords. And let me see, I'm going to need a bit of space. Let me just throw that cabinets down there for the moment. I'm going to grab out one of my other modules, which is called, don't know if it's actually down here. No, it's not. It's down in the MIDI probably. Here it is. It's called Jazzy Jukebox. This is quite a powerful little module. It allows you to load up 127 different MIDI files. Doesn't matter how long they are. And just like we was using the keyboard before, you can actually do the same principle. It's actually got it built in full keyboard mode. And you can actually jump between your different MIDI files. So you can have 127 files and you can jump between them. You could actually obviously load up loads of chords into this and you can jump between the chords. And that's effectively what we're actually going to do in a second. I'm also going to need, this is going to be a MIDI out, so I'm going to need a MIDI to poly converter. Great, so I've got that. So this MIDI out can go into that poly converter. Then I'm going to take this out and I'm going to wire it straight into my ReOrder, he says. Let me just take that outside world off as well. So I'm not going to be affected by anything on the outside world. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to load up a big load of, sorry, it's opened up on the other screen. So it's just opened up this here. Now, when you load folders into the Jazzy Jukebox, you actually have to select one file, and it's from that point onwards it would load. So if I was to select this file here and then click open, it would load this file and every single file below it. So I'm actually going to load up this whole directory. So I've loaded up that whole directory of MIDI files, and I've actually loaded up 48 different MIDI files. Now, I did something wrong, which I'm actually going to go back and correct myself very, very quickly. I know with some of these MIDI files is some of them start right at the beginning. Some of them have a space for whatever reason. And obviously, in some circumstances, you would have a space to do with MIDI timing or whatever at the beginning, because you might want to load up multiple MIDI files. And when you play them at the same time, obviously, you want them to be in sync. Because we're going to be playing these individually, we want them always to start at the very beginning. And the reason I'm going right back to the beginning is I've got this thing called instant start, which means it does, if there's a gap, it's actually going to drag it right to the beginning. So as soon as we select it, it's going to start playing that particular MIDI file. And I'm just going to repeat that process, because by having one selected, it's now made every single other step have this instant start on. So this instant start isn't for the device, it's per MIDI file. So you can have some on and some off, obviously depending what you're trying to do with it. So now we've got loads and 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 loads of chords in here. Obviously I could switch on the live mode and I could say run. And hence we can play them. What I'm actually going to do now is I'm actually going to record all the files from here and store them inside my reset stepper. Oh, this is going to be a bit of fun. Let's see if we can actually get this working first time round. When we're in learn mode and autosave, obviously, as I say, it learns a chord, it saves it, and then it moves on to the next step. When it moves on to the next step, it's going to send a signal out of here. So I'm going to load up another one of my modules, which is called on-change trigger. So it's actually going to pick up that there's been a change. It doesn't care what the change is. It's picked up there's the fact there's a change, and it's going to actually send a trigger out. Tick. That's what we want. I'm going to make a copy of this. Sorry if my hand was in the way. I'm just making a copy of my trig gate. I'm just thinking aloud here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take that trigger, put it through my trig gate, and I'm going to take gate out to tell this to move on a step. So this is what this is. So this allows me to go forward and backwards between all my different steps, between all my different MIDI files. So I'm going to start this off on 0. Let's put this to 0. Good. That's on 0. I'm going to have a simple sample delay, and then I'm going to tell it to run. So I'm going to move this on to the next MIDI file, and then we're going to run it. Now, let me think about this at the top of my head. This should work absolutely fine. So I'm slowing down my speak because sometimes you'll have MIDI files which are longer than the 2 seconds, and you need to obviously wait for them to finish. So if I was in that particular scenario, I've got this sort of end trigger, and I'd actually probably start merging these signals together to do a bit of logic to say, yes, I'm ready to receive the next one. Yes, I've finished my MIDI file. Let's run the next one. But I think we're going to be lucky enough, we'll see in a second, that I should be able to play each of these MIDI files, because they should actually when I move on to the next step, it should actually stop, and then I can hit run. So I'm burbling. Sorry. This should actually work. That out is going to trigger this, which is going to send the gate. Gate's going to come along. It's going to move on to the next step, and then it's going to press run. Run. We've got our stuff going into our reorder. If this happens to be shorter than the 2 seconds, not to worry. So I've got hold all until new gate. So this should finish, drop the gate, and then we should record. I don't know. I'm sounding skeptical myself. Is this actually going to work? So if I push play on here, and it's going to be quite noisy as well, I suppose, because it's going to actually start going through and playing. So I can actually let that go off in the background, and it's actually working as expected. So it's automatically stopped. It's loaded up all the files. It's literally only taken a couple of minutes. I know I cut the video. I didn't want to let you sit through it actually loading up all them different chords. So let's actually go and have a little bit more fun. I don't think I'm going to need any of this stuff now, so I can obviously get rid of this and clean the screens up a little bit. What I'm actually going to do now is take this data, and I'm actually going to take the first note, because I know with these particular chords, again, if I just take this learn off, so it's not in learn mode, we click on something, it's got like a real nice low sort of bass sort of sound, so I'm actually going to go and nick that. So what I'm going to have to grab, I don't know if I've actually got it in here, I want my breakout, so it's my poly breakabout. So this is my poly breakabout. So this was obviously based on this, and we'll obviously have a look at that a little bit later. So I'm going to quickly grab some gate and note, or I might do velocity as well, which we'll take out here. And I'm only actually interested in the low note, because I want to use that as a bass, so I can actually use this. So I need to go and throw this cabbie's mate somewhere. I don't know, it's going to throw it over there, that would do, so it's out of the way. And what I want to do now, so I'm going to go to library, cabinets, and I want a bass sound. I've now got something in here. Oh, here we go, we've got a bass. Oh, we've got two different basses. Let me add both of them basses in. Unfortunately, everything's right down low, so let me just remove this empty cabinet, because we don't want that. So once again, I'm listening to this bass here. That's fine, I can do something with that. Let's do, what's this bass doing then? Why didn't that play? Oh, it's waiting for my storing forward, is it? So it's actually got something already in there. Oh no, none of that's wired up. Oh yeah, we can do something. Yeah, I've got an idea. Here we go. That's just given me a great idea. So we've got ourselves a bass note coming out. I'm going to grab up storing forward here, so it's nearer the top. Maybe I should start using my zoom in. And what I'm actually going to do is, can we turn cables off? Yeah. I'm going to reset this so it's nice and clear. I'm going to take a, oh, I've got this wired up, so let's get rid of that wiring. I'm going to put the note and the gate into this device. I'm going to set this to just one step only. Now, the great thing about storing forward is when you're recording into it, obviously, it doesn't matter what you set for your max steps. If you only put one note in, it's going to repeat that one note and keep repeating it as default. And if you put a second note in, it'll repeat them 2 notes and 3. But you're not having to come in and change anything. It will actually automatically do it as you build up and up and up. So we're actually going to set it to 1. So theoretically, what we're going to say is we're going to bring a note in. It's going to, I'm going to put the retrig on as well, just to make sure it does this. It's going to record it, and then we're going to spit it out, and we're going to play, well, we've got that bass down below we're actually playing at the moment, so I'll turn it on. So let's actually... Obviously, we've got multiple places we've got to turn things on and off, and I've got like a project manager where we can come in and we can obviously turn things on and off globally, so you don't have to keep going around switching things on and off, but I won't set that up just yet. Okay, that's sounding okay. It's not quite sounding the way I want it to sound. I need some space. What I'm going to do is one of my old tricks. I'm going to use what's called a flip-flop counter. I'm going to take the output pitch out, and I'm going to put it into this particular device. I'm going to bring this down to -1 volt. So it's easier just to come here and go -1. I'm going to make sure that -1 is going to flip into here while this is coming through. So it's now going to take it down an octave, he says. But we're going to need some trigger information, so I think I'd use that. So that's sounding quite good. So now we've actually got something a little bit more going on. Sounding good, and I actually might speed that up just for this purpose. So we've got a real tiny glide going on. So that bass is sounding okay. Didn't I have another bass? I didn't do anything with the other bass, did I? What should I do with this bass? Let's just double this bass up over here. Sounding all right, and I'm actually going to do one other trick because I've got, let's have a look, see what we've got going over here. So we're coming out and we're going back. I don't know what I've got here, so I'm just going to use this one here. Why not? I'm going to take the output from this bass, I'm putting it into this particular flip-flop counter. I need to obviously drive this flip-flop counter so that can come and get its information from my storing forward. So it can drive that. And what I'm going to do with this, I'm going to get it to alternate. Yeah, I know what I'm doing. I'm going to get this to alternate the panning. So I'm going to get this to do panning. So I don't want that set on. So we're going to come in on X, and then when we go to this one, I want to push it out to Y. That needs to be off. That needs to be off. Boom, 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 boom. I need to get everything reset and synced in. If not, it's going to start sounding a little bit terrible. So that should start giving me a panning. Cool, so that's sounding really nice as well. So up here, I'm actually got to create myself another quick trig gate. I'm going to grab this one here. And the only reason I'm going to grab this is because I want to, when we start things off, I just want to make sure everything's in sync. So if I'm on the window, so if I click Control there, theoretically, I should be able to come down here, click there, let's click there as well. Doesn't really matter, that's not reset. I'm not even using that stuff over there. I think that's cool. Could even click a restart there as well, I suppose. So it's sounding okay-ish. So let's see what we end up with. And I think the final thing I'm actually going to do, because I've dewired that, I can actually use my keyboard again. Let's plug that into here to actually choose which chord we're going to be playing, he says. I better stop there, if not I'll get myself carried away. So hopefully I've given you some good ideas here of how you can actually use all these components together. Oh, by the way, storing forward, if there's nothing plugged into it, it actually automatically sends out a pulse, whatever you've got it set to. And I've also noticed, obviously storing forward's also got some swingers on it, and we actually had them set, so there's a little bit of swing going to that bass as well. This kind of project, I would just get carried away and build it up and up and up. There's nothing stopping me, because obviously you've got some nice poly data coming out of here. That would be quite good data to go into something like an arpeggiator. So I could even use another poly breakout, and we could say, fine, let's grab the top 4 notes, say, for instance, or 5, whatever you want to do. And we can push them through an arpeggiator, and we can get that obviously following everything else which is going on as well. In fact, let's see if I can really redo that quickly. So what I'm actually going to want is another poly breakout, as it's here. I was going to grab this, pull this over here. I'm going to need myself a little bit of space. Let's move that out of the way for the moment. Quickly wire this up. We're going to go for high-low because we're interested in these high notes, what I'm after. What I'm also going to need to add is to convert this back into... I need to get this converted over into MIDI. Sorry, because I'm going to put an arpeggiator on it. So I'm thinking to myself, I should have thought about this more carefully. So here we go. I'm going to put one of them in. Let's make a quick copy of that as well. It's quicker to do it this way. Quickly wire these up. So I'm only interested in, should we just do 4 notes for the moment? Keep it nice and quick rather than 5. So there we go. We've got ourselves 4 notes. Oh, let's go for 5 notes. There we go. So we've got that set to there. We've got that set to there. I'm going to quickly come in here again. Modules, polyphonic, and I want my... Oh, it's not there. Let's go under favorites. I might have it here. Here we go. Poly to MIDI splitter. Default is set to split the thing. So when it comes in the channel, channel 1 will go out on MIDI channel 1. Poly channel 2 will go MIDI channel 2. That's what that's split for, but we can just pull it down and go into 1. To be honest, it won't affect what we're doing here because we're going to go into an arpeggiator, and an arpeggiator itself will manage it. I suppose that's the best way of saying it. So what I need some more space, don't I? So very, very quickly, let's go and grab an arpeggiator. Oh, is it under controllers? Yes, there we go, an arpeggiator. So let's grab that. So we know we've got some data going into an arpeggiator. Tick. I'm going to use the clock from my store in Chord. So there we go. So I'm using that clock to drive that. We need to obviously go and find a sound very quickly. And I've got another idea which I'm going to do. Actually, let's set it up now and then I'll talk about it. I'm going to put in a gator. So a gator is designed to gates. It opens a gate and it allows a signal through. It doesn't care what the signal is. Because we're going to be taking this gate. I'm going to put this gate through this gator. So the gate is gating a gate. The gate is gating a gate. I can put this link on so I don't have to wire it up twice. So that's actually going to use the pulse to pulse it through. And this is, I've done this on a few of my videos. I'm going to turn these steps off and turn it down to step 7. So I've only got 7 in here, but because we've got 5 notes coming out, haven't we? Oh, it doesn't really matter. We've got 5 notes coming out. I've got an octave range. It's going up and down. I might just change this to down only or up only. I'd like to have a little play around with that. Basically, we're going to obviously have a very static pattern which is going on. With the gator, we're going to put a space in it. So it's just going to pause just that one note. But basically, it's going to be the equivalent of, let's just imagine we've got 4 notes only. It's easy to work out then. And we've got 2 octaves. So that's the equivalent of 8 notes. There we go. Nice and simple. So the first note will come in, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, great. 7 notes is going to be missed. But because it's a gator, when we've got it set to 7 notes, it's going to scroll back to the beginning. So the 8th note will play here. Then this will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it missed the 6th note. And then it'll go round again. And then that'll be obviously 7th, we'll play now, 8th, and then we'll do it the same again. So basically, let's just say, as I said, we've got this 8 pattern. It'll have to go around here 8 times. So it'll be 7 times 8. So our 8 patterns now turn into 56 patterns for it to go back to the same cycle. It's going to sound very, very similar because we're only just knocking off 1 note. But it's just a little trick I like to do to extend and make something just sound that little bit different, because that's what it's going to do. Now, I do need a sound, and I just need a lead from here. Oh, I've got a couple of leads here. I could try, I don't know them leads. Oh, that could be an interesting one. Let's actually grab that one out. So it should have been added. Cool. So we need some pitch data to go into here. We're going to obviously want to take the gate out, and that can go into here. In fact, before I do that, let's listen to the sound. Yeah, that's absolutely cool. So we'll use that. Could have been a disastrous sound and it'd be no good for us. I think the next thing I've got to actually quite do is very, very loud. So I'm going to quickly add in a mixer just to quieten that down. Mixers. Quick stereo mixer. And we can put that to there and that to there. Bring them in. Oh, I've disconnected the thing now. Oops, more to point. I've connected up, so I just play my keyboard. Because I've put them in, they auto override what's coming down. So without anything plugged in there, that's my keyboard was playing this. But now I plug things in, it auto overrides it. I think everything should sort of be working. This has a funny trigger thing, doesn't it, on it? Do I have to turn them off or something? Oh, let's have a look. We'll have a look. So if I turn this on, whoops, no sound because the pitch is coming from here, which is coming from up here. Signal's getting a little bit hot there. So there you go. We've now just added in a simple arpeggiator, and as you can hear, that storing forward did make it sound quite a bit different. If I was to just turn this step on, you actually hear what it sound like without that storing. You're going to hear it with the gator, not the storing forward, sorry. So now I've enabled all steps. This is how it would sound normally. And I really am getting carried away now with myself, so sorry about that. Let's crack on. So let's take a closer look at the Poly ReOrder, but first I'm just going to quickly talk about voices. Poly cables, you can think of them as a poly cable with 16 individual isolated pieces of wires inside, and we're going to state how many of them pieces of wires are going to be live by the number of voices. You're going to hear me refer to them as channels. So when I talk about the individual pieces of wire, I actually call them channels. So starting with channel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, up to 16 in this case. If you are using poly cables and say I'm only using 2 voices out of them cables, I would change this down to 2. The number of voices here has nothing to do with the number of voices that voltage modular supports. It's only down to that poly cable, nothing else. Now the purpose of the poly order is we need to reorder the voices, because what happens is when I play a chord, so let me just play any chord. As you can see, I'm playing this chord here, and you can see down here, and by the way, the poly breakout is the big brother to the poly order. I wrote this a couple of years ago, and this might be a bit easier to visualize because obviously we've broken out the 16 different pieces of wire in that cable. But you can see it's scattered. So if I play another chord, we've got it scattered again. So it's coming down different channels. So them voices are always coming in on different voices. I'm only playing 3 voices, but they're coming on different channels all the time. Now, obviously, the purpose of what we're trying to achieve is we're wishing to glide, say, from this chord here to this chord here. And because they're coming on different channels, we don't know what the starting point is. We may know what the end point is, but we just don't know where the starting point was. So what we need to do is obviously reorder them voices so they come out in an order we can manipulate them. And the simple order I'm going to set these to, and I'll go through all the different algorithms, what they actually do. This low-high would work absolutely perfect. So I'm going to put them both onto low-high here. So now if I play that same chord, you can see it's coming out on channel 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, 3. Next chord, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Which is absolutely perfect. This is what we want. Brilliant. So let's actually have a talk about some of the other bits of setup we've actually got going on here. So this particular device, obviously, it shows exactly what I'm playing on my keyboard, but these are actually showing as well what I'm playing. But the difference is, this is actually coming directly from the MIDI, so is that really. This is actually coming via my poly to MIDI splitter, because I'm going to take out my poly cables. I need to put it into MIDI because that's what the player checker works on. What we're actually looking at here, down here though, it's also telling you how I've actually played the notes. So this is actually in samples. So even though I've hit the keyboard, or you think you hit the keyboard at exactly the same time, it doesn't quite translate that into coming into voltage modular. So it's saying to me, this 0 is saying I hit this note first, then I hit this note, and then I hit this note. And if we look at the top, we've got slightly different numbers. The simple reason is I hit this note, that would have been channel 1. I then hit this note and it's going to say, well, this is actually the lowest note, so I'm going to move this to channel 1 and I'm going to move this to channel 2. And then I hit this note and it's going to say, well, actually, I want to be on channel 2, so I've got to move the note which is on channel 2 onto channel 3, hence why the numbers get juggled around. So this is the true, what I've hit, what's come in, and this is what's actually happened during it's gone through obviously the reorder process. So I'm going to now deliberately play my keys. So I'm going to play that one, then I'm going to play that one, and I'm going to play that one. And I want you to look at this particular polar breakout. I've only got channel 1 wired up, which is coming over to here. So when I hit the first key, you can see it's playing. It's come out in channel 1. I'm now going to hit this key here. Whoops, I hit 2 keys, but you get the idea. You can now see this is channel 1. And now I'm going to hit, say, another key. And now you can see what's playing, because that's only channel 1. So this was channel 1. This is what's coming out of channel 1 now. This is what's coming out of channel 1 now. And obviously them other notes have been moved to channel 2 and 3. So that's how we've actually done a little bit of reordering. But as you can sort of see, we kind of get different numbers. So theoretically, what's going to happen is it's going to come in. As soon as we hit that first note, it's actually going to go off and affect whatever we're doing. This one's going to come in and reorder things. So that's going to affect whatever's happening down the line. Now, admittedly, this is happening so quickly that you probably won't notice it, especially obviously we're going into instruments and at this kind of speed, you won't notice it. But me being me, I like to get things done neat. Let's use the word neat. I've got this option here called New Gate Delay MS. So when a new gate comes in, it sets a timer off. And in this case, I just happen to set it to 29 milliseconds. It's going to wait 29 milliseconds to process everything, and then it's going to send the result out. So now if I play a chord, this is how I played it. So if that note happened to hit first, then this note and this note. And as I said, don't worry, this is happening really quickly. Up here, you can now see that it all says zeros, which means they all came in at the same time. Because I hit all 3 notes within 29 milliseconds, it could reorder it and send it out. So whatever's receiving it is going to receive them in the correct order. So again, if I hit another chord, you can see it. If I actually roll my fingers, I'm going to deliberately roll it. So I've now got different times, because obviously these times came in after that 29 milliseconds, which is fine. And it's just, in fact, to be perfectly honest, I actually put it in the right order. So that was channel 1, that was channel 2, channel 3. So that's absolutely cool. Now, to be perfectly honest, when we release our keys, we get exactly the same result. And in fact, I'm just going to scroll up a second and I'm going to move this down to, can I click on that to get rid of the cables? Oh no, it still shows the cables. So we've only got 4 channels. And the only reason I'm going to do that is because over here, we've got a little bit of a Heath Robinson setup. Let's see if we can get this working. It doesn't always work properly. Let's do a reset. I'm going to hold down, I've got to hold down 4 keys for them brightly. Okay, so I've held down 4 keys, and now when I release them, and you can see that they've actually released at different times. So these numbers can actually be a lot higher depending on obviously how you release the keyboard. But it's the same principle of what's actually happening over the side. So there's a couple of things that we can actually do to help that. I was thinking about putting in another delay to say when we release the keys, which I still might add on. But at the moment, we've got 2 other options. We can say, hold all until new gate. So this time now I'm going to hold down, let's hold down just any notes. There we go. Now, when I'm going to I can actually release my keys altogether. And if I actually, sorry, I'm scrolling, I have to scroll back a bit. You can actually see it's still actually held the chord. So the receiving device is going to still be receiving the chords. This is for notes off, remember. So now when I play another chord, this doesn't actually register. And the reason this doesn't register is because it's going from higher gates to a high gate. It's never actually releasing the gates. So this device here will never actually drop down. Now, for other instruments where we need to, say, activate other envelopes again when that happens, we do have a read trigger option. But we'll actually have a look at that read trigger option working presently. So this time, I'm now going to click it onto hold until last release. And you can see actually over here, it's actually received the release keys all at exactly the same time, which we want to happen. Because I say, if it's releasing at different times, it's doing that reorder, so the notes or the devices which are receiving it will actually be getting different information on different channels as it comes back. So this time I'm going to hold down, say, 4 notes. Here we go. I'm going to start to release them, start to release them, start to release them. So I've only got one held. And of course, over the other side, it's actually still holding the full chord over here. Sorry, I can't scroll for the moment, but I will in a second. But when I do release it, you can see all 4 have actually scrolled here. So what I'm going to quickly do is let's grab this and just bring this over. And let's scroll back here so we can get to see it all on the screen at the same time. So let's just do any 4 notes. Here we go. So here's our 4 notes. I'm going to start to release the notes. I've only held one. You can see the chord is still held perfectly okay until I actually release it. But we've got zeros going back, which we're after. So we've got zeros coming in, and we've got zeros going out. Audio rate, basically, the audio rate is when we're doing our checking, we check every 48,000 times. Because we're doing human input, we don't have to check that many times. By taking this off, I'm only checking like 50 times a second. So that does mean there's going to be an even more slight delay with that when we're playing, but we're only talking very, very slight, and we're very, very slow, so you shouldn't really notice it. Of course, if you want to turn it on, you can turn your audio rate on. The display at the bottom is purely for display only. And that's the number of voices. So I was going to take this off, and we're going to have a look at another little gotcha. So let me just get rid of some of the wires. I'm going to play just 3 notes. There we go. Here's our 3 notes. I'm now going to release channel number 1. And if you noticed, even though they are being physically held here, and it's going through the system, it's actually been released. You might look at it and go, hey, it's actually, they've all gone. And there's a reason behind that, and it's because of, and I need to again scroll over, sorry. It's actually this device will actually be doing that. Because what's actually happening is, let's hold down the 3 notes again. When I release this note, this actually is going to do a reorder. It's going to make this note here, channel number 1, and it's going to make this note here, which is on channel 3, channel number 2. So what happens when we move this from channel 2 to channel 1? Well, this device will say, well, on channel 1, I was playing this note. I'm no longer playing that note, so I'm going to actually send a MIDI note off message. Tick. It's then going to say, oh, I've got a new note. I'm going to send that note on message. Tick. It's then going to come to channel number 2, and it's channel number 2 saying, I was sending this note out, which is now on channel number 1. But because I send it out on channel number 2, I'm actually going to send a MIDI note off message. So it turns it off. And then this one's now moved down to channel number 2. So it would turn that note on channel number 2, but then on channel number 3, it would turn this note off. So when I turn this off, it turns everything off. This is where retrigger works quite happily for this as well. So it's not just for envelopes. So this time, when I release the note, you can see they're not being released. Simple reason being, I've held it down, and it's going to go, fine, I've got to do my reordering, but because I've got retrigger, it means I'm going to sort of kind of make sure everything's gone off, because I've got a sample. It's only going to read the retrigger, only pulls down the gate for literally 1 sample, but that's enough time for this to turn things off, and then, whoops, let go of them all then, and then it will have the ability to turn these on channel 1, channel 2 correctly. So it turns them off, and then this is now on channel 1. So you can see this is channel 1, This is always going to be pointing at channel 1. So you can see that's channel 1, and that's channel 1 as I release the keys. So, yeah, so re-trigger works there quite happily as well. So we've got ourselves a re-trigger. We can obviously do the holds. I rather like the hold until last release. That means I can certainly have to hold one note on it. And let's quickly go over the different algorithms which are actually built into the poly reorder. So we've got a random, so it's going to randomly choose. I've only got 4 voices selected, so if I just play 2, it's going to randomly choose these. But you may only ever see one channel eventually light up, like, oh, it did there, was going a bit too quick. That's because it is really doing a true random, and so when that other voice comes in, it can actually overwrite a voice. It has that ability. So what we do there is we have this random with honor. So this time, it will always do 2. It would never actually overwrite. And if I play 3 notes, it's ever, what, 3 notes, yeah, you'd be using 3 voices, it's never going to overwrite one of them channels. If I play 4, it'd be fine. If I play 5, it will start to overwrite the first channel because we've gone above 4 voices in this particular case. Then we have a random with full honor. So if I was to hold 4 notes down and then play the 5th, it ignores anything above that 5th note. That's what the honor is. We have a round robin, which is going to go from 1, 2, 3, 4. And for this to fully work, I've got to take off the hold. So this time I'm now going to, so if I hold that key and keep playing it, you can see it's going to round robin. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, because I've only got 4 voices selected. If I was to hold that key down and then play another key, it's going to go round the channels, round robin. But this time it's going to it's actually overwritten that note. So you can see this is what's coming in, but this is what's actually being sent out. And there's that other note, because it overwrote it. So again, once again, we have the round robin with honors. So now if I was to hold that, this voice is now going to go to that channel because it's going to say that one's actually on. And the same principle apply that if I go 1, 2, 3, 4, when I hold my 5th note down, it's actually going to overwrite that channel and so on and so forth. And we have the full honor. So anything extra ignores. This, it'll keep anything extra coming in and keep overwriting. This ignores. That's the basics. Now we have this high-low spread, and admittedly, some of these algorithms came from the poly breakout, which makes a little bit more sense. But I thought, fine, I won't remove them just because I can't think of a usage for it. Someone else might do in the actual poly world. But the high-low spread works on the principle of, in this particular case, because we're saying high, the highest note is always going to come out of channel number 1. And because I've only got, let's pretend we've got 8 voices selected. So the next note I play, if I happen to play a note, well, let's say I play a note higher than that high note, well, that high note's no longer the highest, so that new high note will come out of that channel, and that second note will come out of channel at the bottom, so it'd be channel 8. So it'd be 1 and 8, so that's the spread, because we've got 8 channels, that's what I'm saying. And then the next note, depending where it's going to be, will come out on this particular channel, so that'd be channel 2, and then the notes, so we're holding down 4 keys, will come out of channel 7. And it just keeps doing that, so it just sort of creeps itself in, and then eventually you start overwriting. One of the principles I've done this behind is, because I could say, well, fine, this is always my lowest note, which I can use, say, for doing, so this would be my lowest note in this case, which I can go off and do something with the bass, and this could be my high note, which I might actually go and do something with the melody, and the other notes I might grab and push them through an arpeggiator or something. So it allows you to sort of split things out. This is literally just the opposite, so it does the bass at the top and then be the lowest and the highest note at the bottom. The high-low spread is literally that it's going to always start from channel number 1. So in this particular case, it's always going to be the highest note there, and then the lower notes will always be in the lower channels. And this is obviously the one we're playing around with and one I use the most, where we have the lowest note coming out of channel 1, and then so on and so forth. The received order, so if I was to play it in, say, this key, this key, and this key, that is going to be channel 1, that's going to be channel 2, and that's going to be channel 3 always. And then obviously we've actually got the physical voltage modular order, and the only reason you'll probably use that is if you're trying to make use of things like the holds. If not, you'd probably go more direct. And I think that covers the poly reorder. Obviously, same with all my modules. Double-click the bear, and you can have a bit of a dark mode for them late-night hours. The poly big meter. Prime purpose is obviously to measure voltages from a poly cable. So in this next section, I'm going to talk about obviously the modes, different options, and I'm actually going to talk about a few other little features or other things I found and discovered along the way, obviously when playing around with this kind of stuff. So basically, I'm just going to turn them off so we don't have all this numbers flashing all over the screen. 3 different modes, obviously 1 to 8, so it's going to measure channels 1 to 8, starting at 1 at the top, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 at the bottom, and then we've got a 9 to 16, so this one's in 9 to 16, so it'd be channel 9 at the top, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 at the bottom. So obviously if you wanted to look at all 16 channels at the same time, you'd do exactly what I've done here. You set 2 up, one going from 1 to 8, and one going from 9 to 16. Now when we get into channel mode, because we can actually individually monitor individual channels, it changes into a rolling meter. So the latest result's always at the top. Then obviously they scroll that result down and down and down and down as you go on and on. So when you actually have sort of slower voltages going on, it makes a lot more sense of what you actually are looking at, and we'll actually have a look at that presently as well. Once we're in these modes, we've obviously got different kinds of display. C note is really to do with the closest note. It shows the closest note and obviously the actual current voltage as well. I did think about doing cents, so you could sort of say if you're like 50 cent off, 40 cent off or whatever from the note, but I decided no, I'm going to stick with voltages and actually show the note. In channel mode, so we're obviously looking at individual channels, we have a time option. So time option is not valid for when we're actually globally looking at 1 to 8 or 9 to 16. The simple reason is what it's actually going to do is going to say, well, here's the voltage. This is the last voltage, and we actually held it for 790 samples. The last voltage was held for 790 samples. It wouldn't make sense to have a value when you're looking at these, because either I'd be storing or showing you the value of the previous voltage. So here's a current voltage, and this was how long we lasted it for. Or you'll actually have this voltage static, and then you have a little timer running up. So I found that was just a little bit weird. So I decided when we was looking at 1 to 8 or 9 to 16, you don't have the time option. It's just grayed out. Unlimited tries to show you as much as possible. With unlimited, you find the screen will wobble when you get into minus figures. Obviously, the minus figures are going to come out as well. So depending on what you're actually looking at, you can see it sort of bobbing around. Whereas limited, it just limits it. It leaves a little space for if it's minus or not. And it just makes the screen that little bit more static. So it comes down to if you want to really get down into precise figures or not. Now, with all these different options, and let me just turn this off a second, you can actually double click in here and you can obviously copy that voltage out if you needed to store it for results purposes. Obviously, because of the type of field it is, you could end up typing something in here, but don't worry, it's not actually going to affect anything, because as soon as we start it up, even with a slow voltage, it will actually just update the display and put it back to what it really should be. We do have some other lovely little options. And again, so let me just turn this on. We have a simple round one. So we can obviously round the number up if you really wanted to. Obviously, if you go to a very nice high round number, it might slow it down a little bit rather than go really, really fast. We also have, we can look at it, so if it's greater than 0.5 of a volt, or in this case, I can obviously do it less than, so it's waiting for it to be less than 0.5 of a volt before it starts registering. We've got difference. So with difference, it's going to say, well, here, I'm going to turn it, make it greater. It's going to say, right, we're looking for a difference now between 0.3, even though the voltages are coming in, and once the displayed voltage is greater or less than 0.5 of a volt. So if I had 1 volt, I'll have to be 1.5 for it to display a new figure, or even 0.5 of a volt. So it goes either way. So last is to do with the last voltage, which is actually coming in, not the one what is displayed on the screen. So we've got an LFO, which is running, going up and down. We effectively are tracking that LFO now, because that LFO is never going to have a difference greater than 0.5 of a volt coming in. Yes, that LFO could go from minus 5 volts up to plus 5 volts, but because each step is smaller than 0.5 of a volt, it's not going to register. So you may have another process or another module which is coming in and spiking the signal. So it's tracking the LFO quite nicely, and then when it comes in to spike it, it's going to display it, and then hopefully you can track down the problem, what you're trying to identify. The last two options, if I just turn that off a second, is the first 8. So it's just going to put in the first 8 results and then just stops it. So you can just start it again here, or you can hit reset. It doesn't really matter which option you go. It's going to grab the next 8 and the next 8. Unique, again, unique's quite a handy one really for Again, when you've got slightly slower voltages, or you know you've got some static voltages coming in, and we'll have a look at that as well. So what that will actually effectively do, in fact, let's just have a look at it now. I'm just going to take this off here. So what we're going to do is put this onto, let's put this onto, we'll put it onto note. And we'll actually get some voltages from over this side here. Say, for instance, what do I need? There we go. So we've got ourselves loads of voltages coming in. Now, if I've got unique on, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go from between patch 1 and 0 on this particular stepper. So it's going from an E3 to an F3, as you can see. And if you actually watch it, you see it's only actually updating the top bit, and it's never scrolling the bottom bit now, because what it's saying is these values are already in this list. I'm going to move it to the top, so it's always going to move it to the top. So if I had, say, static voltages going on, and then all of a sudden I'm going to throw in another voltage, bosh, and then I go back to my static voltages. Normally, like this one here, and these voltages here, because these are actually, I know it says E3, but actually if you look at the voltages, they're not really appearing at the top between these two, would have scrolled right off the bottom of the screen. So it's a way that you could have something static going on, and then if the odd voltage comes in, oh, I've got an issue, let me go and see what's going on. Again, it's just to try and help you sort of track things down. So let's take that unique off. There's a simple, obviously, input, so you can do a reset. So obviously you wire these all up to the same button. You can obviously reset them all at the same time if you're, depending on what you're monitoring. Obviously, this isn't out monitoring that. This is actually coming from this oscillator here. So I'm just going to disconnect that a second, and we can actually show you some other little things. So I'm going to put this onto channel 1 as well. I'm going to put this onto time. At the moment, I'm just going to take that off. If I switch between my different patches, you can see this one's, the gate is sending out 5 volts. It's sending out a constant 5 volts, and we're changing things around. This is where we got a little read trigger, which I've spoken about earlier. So now when I actually switch, you can see here it is, it's dropped that to 0 volt for 1 sample. And that's enough, obviously, for a lot of devices, either to re-trigger an envelope or, as you saw previously, I was having issues with the, well, it's the poly to MIDI device. I had to have the re-trigger on for that. If not, it would actually turn everything off because it's the way it's reordering stuff. So we can simply see that going on here. Now, this isn't a feature that you can actually look at, but this is something I can quickly talk about. Remember, I was talking about the number of voices and actually how it can obviously affect performance. So what technically, we have something what's called process sample. This is a programming term. So every 48,000 times a second, that particular function is called, and we try and do all our work within that time limit if we're doing something audio related, and to get it back out again. Now, at the moment, I'm just going to put this onto 1 to 8 and this onto 9 to 16. I'm just going to de-wire these, and I'm just going to quickly wire these up. There we go. So they're now wired up to there. Let's put these both onto the same display. At the moment, I have a little feature to say you can't see it. So I'm just going to scroll down, but I want the voices at the top at the same time. So this one line here you're looking at, which is saying 216, this is in nanoseconds. This is how long it's taken to perform one of them samples. So 48,000 times a second, this is what it's doing. This is on average. And it's the same one for this. These are because it's looking at 16 channels. Now, if I start to take this number down, as you can see, we're around about the 220. As I start to take this number down, you can see, obviously, this one here, because it's got a lot less work to do. It's being quicker. But this one here has also dropped, even though I'm checking the 9 to 16 channels. So I'm purely just dealing with 1 to 8, and I'm even ignoring that the fact there's more channels, because this is the same purpose with this one. This one has obviously got the 1 to 8 sort of coming into it, but I'm ignoring it. I'm not actually processing it. But you can see as I bring it down, and once this is actually not processing anything, it really does drop right off. And this one, actually, look, it's popped up a bit. So you can see some funny switch go on with these figures. But again, as I pull it down, you can start seeing the process meter. It's this lower number, by the way, means it's going quicker. So it's processing its routine a lot quicker. If it's processed its routine a lot quicker and it's processed its routine a lot quicker, it's got more time to do other routines in other devices. But this is what I mean by saying if I was only ever playing 4-note chords, I would set this to 4, because overall it's just helping your system. And this is just sort of a little bit of that proof in the pudding what I was talking about earlier. So as I ramp the numbers up, you can see these routines are now taking longer time to complete because obviously there's a lot more work for it to do. Now, totally sort of non-related is, this is obviously a poly oscillator. I've got it into low mode, so to me it's acting as an LFO. I found it quite interesting that I would have said all 16 channels theoretically should have been, I don't know if it should have been sending out the same signal or not, but I noticed that actually the different channels are actually running at different speeds, and we can actually see that if we put this into the time mode. So this particular voltage is holding itself for around about 790 samples, but yet when we go down to this one, we've dropped down to 7,128. And in fact, if I stop voltage modular, it doesn't matter what I do if I reset this, but if I stop voltage modular and restart voltage modular, these timings all change. So this one here is at a staggering one. So this is like 20,000. And over here on my big counter, I'm actually counting it. So this one here is only happening 3 times a second, whereas I think I'm looking at number 7 there, because I found number 7 to be the lowest at the moment. When I reset it another time, this was down to like 100 samples it was down to. So obviously this figure here was a lot higher. So this is actually, you know, 158 times we're getting a new figure out. Obviously, as soon as you go on to the other ones, this is now, we're going into what we refer to as audio rate. You see, this should really be up to 48,000, but obviously there's a slight overhead, so it's slightly down. So it doesn't really matter. And so we're looking at the same channels. So it doesn't seem to be affecting there. I just noticed it's something weird going on the low channels. This is something I could go back to voltage, you know, go back to Cherry with and say to him, hey, what's actually going on here? Is there something amiss with this particular module? I did think it might have been something to do with the pitch, being different pitches coming in. So I tried to put a single pitch in to try and match them all up and try to do a hard sync, tried a few other little things. But fine, it's the way it is. I'm not following it through. I'm just saying, here's an example where something is happening. I don't know the true answer. I've got some results. I could obviously go back to someone else and say, hey, what's going on here? But this could be my, you know, great big generative project I'm working on. And obviously I might be getting a funny, and I could actually obviously try and track it down with what's actually going on. Totally non-related to that, say. So I'm just talking about in general here. But again, as you can see, we've got a nice big different numbers here, because now this is going into it just a single channel mode, where this is obviously doing all 16. And then obviously if I grab this down, this figure here, see this figure here, I wouldn't expect to change, but it did. It does change. And the reason I say I wouldn't think it to change, oh, of course it would change, because I was on channel 12. If I was on the lower channel, I wouldn't expect it to change. Hey, there we go. So I'm not going too mad. It's only going to come down a small amount as we sort of drop the channels, because obviously there's all 16 channels are always going to be coming into here. Well, at the moment, only 8 channels are going to be coming into here. So even though I'm only looking at one physical channel and I'm not manipulating the data on any of them other channels, I'm not even examining them or seeing what's going on, you know, you'd expect it to be the same. But obviously under the hood, there is some extra little bit of work going on, which we're not totally aware of. I think that's enough waffle about the poly big meter. So this completes the video for the poly reorder, the chord stepper, and the poly meter. They're also going to appear in the PoohBear goodie bag treat pot bundle. And so if you own them, obviously you're going to be able to go into Modular and download them and have some fun. I highly recommend buying the bundles rather than individual items, because obviously you get all the goodness, and my modules are designed really to work with each other, as most things are in Modular, to be perfectly honest. If you found this video useful, because it's obviously a lot longer than my normal kind of video, rather than me just doing a technical, let me know and I'll make some more for you. Anyway, thank you for watching, and bye for now.